Hello, artists. It's Catherine Ziegler with the Acting for Your Life podcast, and welcome. This is season 4. Thank you for celebrating 4 years with us here at Acting for Your Life with our podcast, and 10 years of the Acting for Your Life program. The Acting for Your Life program is a life and career balance program workshop series that helps artists find balance in life and career through everyday life skills, organizational skills, and we run the gamut all the way through how to make a success of your career in the entertainment industry. Today's Wise Words Wednesday's guest is a phenomenal lady. Her name is Kim Swanson. Kim is a casting director based out of Los Angeles, California. She also has a studio in St. Louis, and she is just a wonderful, wonderful lady. She is sharing all of her knowledge and information for free on her YouTube channel. So if you ever had any questions about casting, how casting works, the ins and outs of that, how you can make the most of every audition, you need to go to YouTube right now and subscribe to her channel on YouTube. You look for Kim Swanson, The Casting Factor. That's Kim Swanson, The Casting Factor. Find her on YouTube and subscribe to her channel. When you subscribe, you'll get access to all of the wonderfully amazing training videos that she has to offer. And we want to thank Kim so much for joining us today. Hey, Kim, thanks for joining us on the Acting for Your Life podcast.
Thanks for having me, Catherine.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, Kim and I met actually through Louisville's International Festival of Film here in Louisville, Kentucky. We were a part of an educational seminar together, and I just found your story so amazing, and it starts the way so many arts stories begin, with how you found the entertainment industry. Tell our listeners how you got involved and fell in love with the process of acting and casting.
Well, it goes way, way, way back. I think, so many of us as children, we have dreams when we're little, but we're taught that it's just silliness, But, unfortunately, the world tries to zap us of our heart and our soul too often. But when I was little, I actually grew up in a small town in Illinois, of Danville, Illinois, which happens to be the home of Gene Hackman, Dick Van Dyke, Jerry Van Dyke, Donald O'Connor, Jim Gammon, Bobby Short. I mean, the list is on and on of amazing, talented people. So fortunately, though, growing up in that little town, I knew that there were several people who worked full-time in Hollywood. And actually, Jerry Van Dyke was on the board at the YMCA with my mom. And I would see him, regularly at meetings there. And then I'd see him on TV, the night or two later on the Dick Van Dyke Show. And I thought that was a pretty common thing for people to do for the living.
Sure.
So that was a good inspiration. And of course, I learned through them that, in this business, you don't have to start out big. You just have to start. They all started, by working at movie theaters and studying acting by watching films, as ushers, by being in the Parks and Recreation talent contests and things like that. And that's how they all started getting their acting chops. So that was very inspirational and good to learn as an actor that you don't have to just, get on a plane or a bus or whatever to New York or LA and say, here I am, and then expect to jump in full, 100%.
Yeah.
You have to, start, as big as you can where you are.
Yeah.
So I was lucky to do that. And so from there, I ended up studying dance as a child. I actually had an issue with my legs, and my mom said she had tears and tears and tears over it because my legs tended to face backwards. I had muscles on the outside of my legs that grew, and the muscles on the inside of my legs did not. So growing up in a small farm town, our doctor said, put her in tap classes. That will straighten her out, instead of therapy. And so I started dancing at a very young age and fell in love with it. And I remember going to the theater and watching Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins and dancing and tumbling on the rooftops, and I said, I want to do that someday. So that's why I pursued dance and gymnastics and loved every second of it. Ended up performing and did some tours and some stage shows like George M. and a chorus line and that sort of thing. But, then life hit. I have a daughter who, when she was tiny, went through a divorce. And, long story short, the attorney said, you need to get a job, in order to maintain custody. So, I entered the workforce of jobs and went home in tears every day and hated every second of it. But it was an important part of my journey nonetheless. And then, at one point I said, I can't do this anymore. And I opened up a dance school thinking that would be a good outlet, which was an improvement for sure. Over working in a cubicle difficult. And then from there, I hired someone else to work part-time for me who was a producer. And she called upon me one day and said, hey, you seem to know everybody in this business in this town, who's an actor. I've been trying to cast something. The only casting director in St. Louis is at finding what I need. Mm-hmm. People look at me like I'm an alien when I ask for this. Do you know anybody who? I said, who'd be great for that? Renee just got back from LA. She's wonderful. Let me see if she's interested. I'd send my friend. And they'd call and say, she's great. A couple weeks later, this producer called me again. Hey, Kim, I'm stuck again. Do you know anybody who? Who'd be great for that? Little Robert, John, Amanda. They'd be perfect. Mm-hmm. Sent them. A couple weeks later, same question. Who'd be great for that? Is Gordon and, so. Oh, okay, great. In all cases, the people I sent were hired on the spot.
Wow.
And she was very grateful and said, you really should do this for a living. I said, nah, I don't know anything about casting. She's like, no, really, you do. So actually all 3 spots that I cast for her won Emmy Awards that year.
Wow.
And then, and they play the winning spot. So then all the other producers and directors said, hey, where'd you find that talent? Did you fly him in from New York? Did you fly him in from LA? How'd you find him? Oh, my friend Kim found him. Well, who's this Kim person? Is she a casting director? And the gal said, well, yes and no. She is, but she doesn't know she is. So I started getting calls of people thinking I'm a casting director. And I would say, I'm not a casting director, but I'll help you out. And whatever you want to call yourself. Just help me. So I ended up actually jumping on an airplane. I'd sent letters. This is before the days of everything being on the internet.
Sure.
And I read a book and studied about 40 different casting directors in LA and found 5 that I most admired. Mm-hmm. And I sent them letters saying, hey, I'm coming to Los Angeles. Is there any way I could shadow you for a day or just have a cup of coffee with you? And 3 of them answered back, sure. So wow. I booked a flight and I went out to LA and spent a week and jumping from office to office, watching and learning. And that's how I started casting.
That's amazing. And it sounds like just through everything in your life, and creative people tend to be this way if they're lucky. But the idea of just being proactive and making sure that even if you don't know where your path is going, that you're doing something every day to challenge yourself, to move yourself forward. How much of that philosophy has followed you to this day?
Oh my gosh. I'm a big believer in, the longest journey starts with one small step. Mm-hmm. So if each day, you can just do one more thing towards your career, towards your dream, towards your goal, when you look back, you can look back and say, well, I've taken 365 steps this year. When you think about that, it's daunting to think of how many steps you need to take to get to that goal. But if you just take one a day, it works. And that's a philosophy that's carried through for me as a dancer. Back when I was dancing, and I was dancing professionally and teaching dance, I would always tell dancers, look, you come to class every day, and you may not think your battement is getting higher or your back walkover is getting stronger or whatever. But if you make it just an inch better each day, just think how much higher that battement is going to be in a year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It'd be back over your head. You can't. Yeah. So people don't think about it in small steps. And I think that that's what is very daunting, and that's what scares us away from our passions and our goals. Is we look at it as too big, to accomplish on our own. Versus I'm just going to do one thing towards it today.
What do you think? What advice would you give would be a first step for not only actors who are new to the business, but actors who are currently in the business that are looking to further their careers? What are some good first steps for them in terms of preparing themselves to be received by a casting director like yourself?
Well, I think it's interesting because it's changed so much since I started casting over 20 years ago, mm-hmm. Because of the advent of the internet. It's so easy to go online and Google things. It's not even funny now. Mm-hmm. And just, study people. What I always tell people, too, is, find someone on screen that you admire or find performances you admire. And perhaps maybe there's a film you really love or a television show you particularly love. And if you would love to be a part of that, then it's so easy to go on IMDb these days, or IMDb Pro if you want to pay the $15 month subscription, mm-hmm. And look and see who's involved with that project. Read the bios on those people and find out what they did to get where they are, which is where you're hoping to be. And use them as a template. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, it depends on what your goal is. If you want to be a stage actor, or if you want to be in film or television or voiceover, or whatever your dreams are, or maybe, you know, a combination of those things. No one says you have to limit and do just one. But find, you know, look at the people that you admire. You know, I'm a big reader of biographies. I love to read biographies because every one I read, I always end up inspired and realize how they accomplished something, or how they got where they were, or even where their mistakes were, so I don't make the same one. You know, so I'm a big advocate of read. It's, you know, don't just jump in and say I know it all. You know, learn from everybody. You know, learn from other people's mistakes. Learn from other people's accomplishments, and the best way to do that is read.
In terms of training, there was an article, the Maggie Flanagan Studio posts Maggie's blog weekly, and she wrote about Americans in training, acting training specifically, and how one of her philosophies is that we're losing jobs as Americans because our training isn't as solid. And a lot of those roles that could have been taken by solid American actors are now being taken by British actors and folks from overseas, because their training process, not just in terms of their talent, but in terms of the work that they put in, the research they put into their roles, plays such a prevalent part in their daily lives. Do you find this to be true? Are American actors, is there a disconnect in terms of training?
I think there is. I'm not a big believer in researching the roles and research, because in real life, you know, if I were to walk up and meet you for the first time, I don't know any of your background, but we're able to have a conversation regardless. I don't need to know all your history in order to have a conversation that moves us forward in our lives. So, you know, I'm not a big believer on all that method and that kind of thing.
Sure.
I am a believer on training, though. One of the biggest mistakes I see with actors, and my good friend Brian Cutler, who's an amazing acting coach, and he has a school in Kansas City and LA as well, and he said something once that makes so much sense to me, and it's so true. You know, actors are different from every other artist. If you are a cellist, you will pick up your cello and play every day, hours upon hours. If you are a dancer, you will go to the studio and you will dance every day, hours upon hours. If you're a vocalist, you will vocalize every day, hours upon hours. If you're an actor, you sit by the phone and wait for it to ring.
It's so true. I love that story when you tell it. That's like the third time I've heard you tell it, and it rings true every single time.
Yeah, it's so true. And, you know, actors, I mean, and I don't think that it's necessary to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on training programs and teaching you how to pose and all that baloney. I think that the problem is we have a culture where fame is glorified and artistry is not so much. But in the big picture, the people you most admire are the real artists.
And that concludes part 1 of our interview with casting director Kim Swanson. You want to make sure to tune in tomorrow for part 2, where Kim goes even in more depth about the casting process and how she finds balance in life and career. You want to make sure you go to Kim Swanson, The Casting Factor, on YouTube and hit subscribe, because as soon as you hit subscribe, you're able to view all the training videos that she has. She's got a lot of great information to share, how you can make your next audition your most successful audition. Thanks again to Kim, and we'll have part 2 tomorrow. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Acting for Your Life podcast. As always, you can find information about Acting for Your Life and all of our programs, including AFYL TV, at acting4yourlife.com. That's acting4yourlife.com. Any questions? You can also email us at acting4yourlife@gmail.com. That's acting4yourlife@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Look for part 2 of our interview with Kim Swanson tomorrow. Now go out there and break some legs.